I'm Sarah Henderson, 34, and I still can't believe my own father blocked my number after I confronted him. 6 months ago, I spent $20,000 on a luxury anniversary cruise for my parents' 40th celebration. Yesterday, I discovered they'd already left for their dream vacation without telling me. Worse, they brought my younger sister Melissa and her husband instead. When I called to ask why, Dad simply said, "Your stepmother didn't want you there." Stepmother. The woman I've called Mom for 28 years isn't even my biological mother. This was how I learned my entire family history was a lie. Before I dive into the most painful family betrayal I've ever experienced, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below so I can see how far this crazy family drama has traveled. If stories about family secrets and justice being served are your thing, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, what happened after I discovered the truth about my parents' cruise will have you questioning everything about family loyalty. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you need to know what my family meant to me before everything fell apart. I grew up in suburban Portland, in what I always thought was a normal, loving household. My parents, James and Laura Henderson, seemed like the perfect couple. Dad worked as an accountant, and Mom ran a small interior design business from home. I was their only child until I turned 6 when my sister Melissa was born. My relationship with my father was especially close throughout my childhood. Every summer, we'd go on fishing trips to Lake Oswego, just the two of us. He taught me carpentry in his workshop, and I still have the birdhouse we built when I was 9. Those weekends in the garage, measuring twice and cutting once, were sacred to me. Mom was more reserved, but showed love in her own way. She always made my favorite lemon cookies for my birthday, read stories to me every night until I was almost too old for it, and created beautiful family traditions for holidays. I can still smell the cinnamon and cloves from her homemade Christmas potpourri. I was what you'd call the perfect daughter. I maintained straight A's throughout school, never snuck out at night, and rarely talked back. I won a full scholarship to Oregon State, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm, where I've since worked my way up to executive level. I did everything right, everything they could have wanted. But despite my achievements, there was always this strange emotional distance I couldn't quite understand. When I would call home with good news, they'd congratulate me, but quickly change the subject. When I visited, conversations felt stilted, as if there were topics carefully being avoided. For years, I chalked it up to my parents being from a less emotionally expressive generation. After Melissa was born, the dynamic shifted. I noticed my parents attended every one of Melissa's soccer games, but missed my college debate championships. They remembered her boyfriend's birthdays, but forgot my work promotions. When Melissa struggled in school, they hired tutors and attended every parent-teacher conference. When I needed help with college applications, Dad simply handed me a book on scholarships. I rationalized their behavior for years. They know I'm strong enough to handle things on my own, I'd tell myself. Melissa needs more support. I became the self-sufficient daughter who never complained while secretly wondering why my accomplishments seemed to matter less. 5 years ago, Melissa married Brandon, a pharmaceutical sales rep with a charming smile and wealthy parents. Their wedding was an elaborate affair at an upscale vineyard. My parents spent nearly their entire savings on it, proudly telling guests, "Nothing's too good for our baby girl." I helped with decorations, gave a heartfelt toast, and genuinely felt happy for my sister, even as I noticed my parents beaming with a pride they rarely directed at me. Last year, when I got engaged to Tyler, their reaction was notably subdued. Mom asked practical questions about budget and venue, while Dad nodded along. No tears of joy, no excited phone calls to relatives. Tyler noticed their lukewarm response immediately. "They didn't even hug you," he whispered as we left dinner that night. "They're just not demonstrative people." I defended, though. The contrast with how they'd reacted to Melissa's engagement was stark. Our wedding is planned for 6 months from now. I've been handling most arrangements myself with Mom, occasionally sending links to discount dress sites, and Dad asking if we'd considered a courthouse ceremony to save money. The same parents who spent $30,000 on Melissa's floral arrangements alone. Looking back, I can see how my desire to please them drove almost every major decision in my life. My college major, my career path, even my condo purchase in a neighborhood they approved of. I was still seeking the wholehearted approval that never quite came. In the months before this cruise disaster, I noticed subtle changes in Dad's behavior. His phone calls became shorter, more hesitant. He canceled 2 dinner plans at the last minute with vague excuses. During my 34th birthday dinner in February, both my parents seemed uncomfortable the entire time, checking their watches and declining dessert. I remember watching them hurry to their car afterward and feeling a strange premonition that something was wrong. If only I'd known how wrong things really were. I first learned about my parents' upcoming 40th wedding anniversary 6 months ago during a Sunday dinner at their house. Melissa mentioned it casually while passing the potatoes, and my father quickly changed the subject. That struck me as odd, considering 40 years of marriage deserved celebration, but I made a mental note of the date. That night, driving home, I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. My parents had always talked about wanting to take a Caribbean cruise, but never had the money or time. Between raising us and working constantly, their dreams of travel had been perpetually postponed. This milestone anniversary seemed like the perfect opportunity to give back to them after all their sacrifices for me. I began researching cruise options the very next day. I spent hours comparing different cruise lines, reading reviews, and examining cabin layouts. I wanted everything to be perfect. Eventually, I selected a 14-day luxury Caribbean cruise with Royal Caribbean, booking a premium suite with a private balcony, unlimited drink packages, and exclusive dining options. The total came to just over $20,000. This wasn't a small amount for me. Tyler and I had been saving for our honeymoon in Italy, but I decided our plans could wait. My parents deserve this once-in-a-lifetime experience. I worked directly with the cruise company to arrange special anniversary decorations, a private dinner with the captain, and surprise excursions at each port of call. I even coordinated with the entertainment director to have my parents recognized during one of the shows. Tyler expressed concerns when I told him how much I'd spent. "That's our entire honeymoon fund," he said carefully. "And most of your emergency savings. We can postpone Italy," I assured him. My parents have never taken a real vacation. 40 years of marriage deserve something special. Tyler hesitated before saying, "I just wonder if you're always putting your parents' needs ahead of your own. They didn't even help with your college tuition, yet you're spending this kind of money on them." I dismissed his concerns. "You don't understand. This is my chance to finally show them how much I appreciate everything they've done." "What exactly have they done that merits $20,000? Tyler asked. His question annoyed me then. I accused him of being selfish, and we had our first serious argument. Now I realize he saw something in my family dynamic that I'd been blind to my entire life. I presented the cruise gift certificate to my parents during a family dinner at their favorite steakhouse. I'd imagined tears of joy, hugs, maybe even my father finally telling me he was proud of me. Instead, their reaction was bizarrely subdued. Mom took the envelope with a tight smile. "This is quite extravagant, Sarah." Dad examined the details, his expression unreadable. "This is too much. We can't accept this." "Of course you can," I insisted. "You both deserve it. It's all arranged for June. The cruise line has everything ready." They exchanged a look I couldn't decipher before Dad cleared his throat. "Well, that's very generous, thank you." Then Mom abruptly changed the subject to Melissa's new kitchen renovation. My carefully planned moment was over in seconds, with no acknowledgement of the sacrifice it had represented. Driving home that night, I felt a familiar disappointment, but pushed it away. They were probably just overwhelmed, I told myself. They'd appreciate it more as the trip got closer. In the weeks that followed, I called regularly to check on their cruise preparations. Had they purchased summer clothes for the Caribbean heat? Did they need luggage? Had they selected their shore excursions? Each time their answers were vague and dismissive. "We're handling it," Dad would say. "Don't worry yourself about the details." When I offered to take Mom shopping for cruise wear, she declined, saying she already had plenty of suitable clothes. When I suggested helping them research the ports of call, Dad said he preferred to be surprised. 2 weeks before the departure date, I dropped off a special anniversary photo album I'd created, filled with family pictures through the years. Mom answered the door but didn't invite me in, taking the album with a quick thank you. I caught a glimpse of suitcases in the hallway, but when I asked about their packing progress, she said they were old bags they were donating to Goodwill. Looking back, the signs were all there. The awkward pauses when I mentioned the cruise. The way they changed subjects whenever I brought up specific details. Their reluctance to involve me in any preparations. But I was so determined to believe in the perfect family narrative I'd constructed that I ignored every red flag. A strange tension filled the air when I stood on their doorstep that day, the kind that makes your skin prickle with awareness that something isn't right. But I smiled and wished them a good evening, driving away with an uneasy feeling I should have trusted. Instead, I silenced my intuition once again, remaining the dutiful daughter who never questioned, never pushed, never demanded the truth I deserved. Number 4. The shocking discovery. The day before the cruise departure, I called my parents to wish them well. I'd prepared a little care package with motion sickness, medicine, sunscreen, and a few other travel essentials. To my surprise, the call went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times throughout the day with the same result. Eventually, I called Melissa, thinking she might know if their plans had changed. Her phone also went to voicemail immediately. By evening, my concern had grown into genuine worry. What if something had happened to them? What if there was a family emergency no one had told me about? I decided to drive to their house to check. When I arrived, the house was dark. No cars in the driveway, no lights on inside. I used my emergency key to enter, calling out for my parents as I moved through the silent rooms. Everything was tidy but clearly vacant. Mail had been put on hold, the plants moved to the kitchen counter for easy watering. The house had the unmistakable feel of a planned absence. I stood in their living room, confusion washing over me. Had I gotten the departure date wrong, I checked the cruise documents on my phone. No, the ship was scheduled to leave the next morning from Fort Lauderdale. They should still be home preparing for their early flight. I called their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had lived next door for 20 years. "Oh, the Hendersons left this morning," she said cheerfully. "Laura asked me to keep an eye on the house while they're on that lovely cruise you got them." "So thoughtful of you, dear." "They left today, but the cruise doesn't depart until tomorrow." "Yes, they flew out with Melissa and Brandon. Something about making a vacation of it, staying in Florida a night before boarding." Laura was so excited. My hand tightened around the phone. "Melissa and Brandon are going with them." "Why, yes, didn't you know? Laura's been talking about their family cruise for weeks." I thanked her and hung up, my mind spinning. Family cruise. My sister and her husband were joining them. Why hadn't anyone told me? With shaking hands, I opened the Royal Caribbean app on my phone. I'd kept my confirmation as the gift purchaser, which allowed me to see basic information about the booking. According to the app, my parents had already checked in online, and so had 2 additional guests. Still disbelieving, I opened Instagram and immediately saw it. Melissa had posted a picture just an hour earlier. She and Brandon were posing in front of a palm tree, cocktails in hand. The caption read, "Pre-cruise celebrations with Mom and Dad. So excited for our family adventure number 4. 0th anniversary cruise number family vacation." I scrolled through the comments. Someone had asked, "Is Sarah meeting you there?" Melissa had replied. "Just the 4 of us on this trip." My stomach lurched. I tried calling everyone again. My father's phone went straight to voicemail. My mother's phone rang once, then disconnected. Melissa's account showed she'd read my text message but didn't respond. I drove home in a dazed, tears blurring my vision. How could they do this? How could they take the extravagant gift I'd given them and not only leave without telling me, but bring my sister and her husband instead? When I got home, Tyler took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. I collapsed into his arms, the full weight of the betrayal finally hitting me. "They took Melissa and Brandon on the cruise I paid for," I sobbed. "They didn't even tell me they were leaving. They blocked my calls." Tyler's expression darkened in a way I'd never seen before. "What the hell? Are you serious?" I showed him Melissa's Instagram post, now featuring a new photo of all 4 of them at the airport, caption Florida bound. "That's $20,000, Sarah. Your money." And they didn't even have the decency to tell you they were excluding you from a trip you paid for. "I don't understand," I whispered. "What did I do wrong?" Tyler pulled me close. "You didn't do anything wrong. This is messed up on so many levels." Over the next few hours, I tried desperately to reach anyone in my family. I called relatives, family, friends, even my parents' neighbors again. No one seemed to know why I hadn't been included, or if they did, they weren't telling me. I always knew something was off with how they treated you, Tyler said as we sat on our couch that night. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation, I said weakly, still trying to defend the people I'd spent my life trying to please. Tyler took my hand. Sarah, I need you to hear me. This isn't normal. This isn't how loving parents treat their child. Deep down, I knew he was right. But acknowledging the truth meant accepting that my entire understanding of my family was wrong. That the love I thought was unconditional came with terms I'd never been informed of. That somehow I'd always been on the outside of my own family without knowing why. The next morning, desperate for answers, I went back to my parents' house. I needed to find something, anything that might explain what was happening. I spent hours searching through their home office, looking through files and drawers. In the back of their closet, I found a box of old photo albums I'd never seen before. Curious, I opened the top one and froze. There, smiling back at me, was a woman I didn't recognize holding a baby that was clearly me. She had my eyes, my smile. Page after page showed her with me as an infant, as a toddler, always looking at me with obvious love. My hands trembled as I realized I was looking at my real mother. The woman I'd been calling Mom my entire life wasn't the woman who had given birth to me. And suddenly the pieces started falling into place. I spent the next hour trying to reach my father through every possible channel. Finally, in desperation, I called the cruise line directly, explaining it was a family emergency. After being transferred multiple times, a sympathetic customer service representative agreed to leave an urgent message for my father to call me. 30 minutes later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was my father calling from the ship's satellite phone. Sarah, what's going on? They said it was an emergency. His voice was calm, almost cold. No apology for leaving without telling me. No explanation for taking my sister instead of me. Just mild annoyance at being inconvenienced. What's going on? I repeated, my voice shaking. I paid $20,000 for your anniversary cruise and you left without telling me. You brought Melissa and Brandon instead. You've been ignoring my calls. And I just found photos of a woman who appears to be my actual mother. That's what's going on, Dad. There was a long silence before he spoke. This isn't a conversation we should have over the phone. We're having it now, I insisted. You owe me an explanation. He sighed heavily. Your stepmother didn't want you there. She thought it should be just the four of us. The word hit me like a physical blow. Stepmother Laura isn't my biological mother. Another lengthy pause. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed, resigned to revealing a secret he'd clearly never intended to share. No. Your birth mother's name was Catherine. She left when you were 4. Laura came into our lives shortly after. We got married quickly, and we decided it would be easier if you just thought of her as your mother. Easier for who I demanded, tears streaming down my face. I had a right to know. It was a long time ago, Sarah. Water under the bridge. 28 years of lies is not water under the bridge. Why wasn't I invited on this cruise? Why did you take the trip I paid for without even telling me? Look, he said, his tone hardening. Laura never fully accepted you as her daughter. She tried, but there was always tension, especially after Melissa was born. This cruise was supposed to be a celebration of our family. I am your family, I shouted. I'm your daughter. Of course you are, but Laura views Melissa as her only true child. She was uncomfortable having you on what she considered a family vacation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you chose her comfort over basic decency to me. I paid for this cruise, Dad, with my own money that I worked hard for. We'll pay you back eventually, he said dismissively. Laura just wanted to enjoy this trip without any tension. In the background, I heard a woman's voice asking who he was talking to. My father's voice became muffled, as if he'd covered the phone with his hand. I heard them arguing briefly before he came back on the line. I need to go now, Sarah. We'll deal with this when we get back. Don't you dare hang up on me, I cried. I deserve answers. Where is my birth mother now? Why did she leave? Why did you lie to me my entire life? I said we'll discuss this when we return, he repeated firmly. This isn't the time or place. You don't get to decide that anymore, I said, my voice breaking. You've controlled this narrative my entire life. You've lied to me, excluded me, and now you've taken something that was mine and given it to Melissa. Again. You're being dramatic, he said coldly. We can talk about this like adults when I get back. Like adults, I laughed bitterly. Adults don't steal from their children. Adults don't lie for decades about something as fundamental as who their mother is. I heard Laura's voice again in the background, more insistent this time. My father sighed. I need to go, he said. If you hang up now, don't expect me to be waiting for you when you get back, I warned. That's your choice, he replied, and the line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. He had hung up on me, and when I tried to call back, I discovered he'd blocked my number. I sank to the floor of my parents' home office, surrounded by photo albums of a woman I'd never known, proof of a life I hadn't been allowed to remember. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that I could barely breathe through it. Have you ever had that moment when your entire life suddenly makes a horrible kind of sense? When all those little inconsistencies, those moments of doubt you pushed away suddenly align into a truth so obvious you can't believe you missed it. That's where I was sitting on my parents' floor, surrounded by evidence of their decades of deception. If you're still with me through this roller coaster of family betrayal, take a second to hit that like button. In the next part, I'll share the shocking discoveries I made when I started searching for my birth mother. And believe me, the cruise betrayal was just the beginning of what my father had been hiding. The next few days passed in a blur. Tyler took time off work to stay with me, concerned about my emotional state. I barely ate or slept, my mind racing with questions about my true origins and the mother I couldn't remember. I need to know the truth, I told Tyler on the third morning after my father's call. Not their version of it. The actual truth. He nodded. Where do we start? Their house. They're gone for 2 weeks. There must be documents, letters, something that can tell me more about Catherine. We drove to my parents' house using my emergency key again. This time, I wasn't just looking casually. I was on a mission to uncover 28 years of secrets. In their home office, I found a locked desk drawer I hadn't noticed before. After searching unsuccessfully for a key, Tyler helped me pick the lock using a tutorial he found online. Inside was a manila envelope labeled simply Sarah Documents. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first paper I pulled out was my birth certificate. There it was in black and white, mother's name Catherine Miller, father's name James Henderson. I traced my fingers over her name, this woman who had given birth to me, whose existence had been erased from my life. Beneath the birth certificate were photographs. Me as a newborn in Catherine's arms, her face radiant with joy. Me taking my first steps while she knelt nearby, arms outstretched. Catherine and my father with me at a beach, all of us smiling. These images contradicted any notion that she had abandoned me willingly. Deeper in the stack, I found divorce papers dated 30 years ago. The language was formal and cold, but one section jumped out at me. My father had claimed abandonment of family as grounds for divorce. But how could that be true when there were photos of Catherine with me until I was at least 4th? Then I found something that shook me to my core: letters. Dozens of them addressed to me spanning years. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, notes written in a delicate handwriting I didn't recognize. All unopened. All from Catherine Miller. The 12th of October, 1995. Dear Sarah, happy 5th birthday, my sweet girl. I hope you like the doll I sent. I picked her because she has your beautiful eyes. The 25th of December, 1999. My darling Sarah. It's Christmas morning, and I'm thinking of you opening presents. The 8th of June, 2007. My dearest Sarah. Congratulations on your middle school graduation. I wish more than anything I could be there to see you. Year after year, milestone after milestone, Catherine had written to me. And my parents had kept every letter from me, never even opening them. I also found court documents showing Catherine had fought for custody but lost to my father, whose family had wealth and connections she couldn't match. There were records of her repeated attempts to secure visitation rights, all denied or severely limited. The most devastating document was dated just after my father married Laura, an adoption petition. Laura had legally adopted me, and as part of that process, Catherine's parental rights had been terminated. The paperwork cited Catherine's failure to maintain contact as justification, a cruel falsehood given the stack of intercepted letters in my hands. "Tyler," I whispered, my voice breaking. "She tried to stay in my life. For years. They prevented it. They lied to me my entire life." Tyler looked through the documents, his expression growing increasingly angry. "This is beyond messed up, Sarah. They didn't just hide her existence. They actively blocked her from having any relationship with you." The final shock came when I found an envelope with a return address in Seattle postmarked just 10 years ago. Catherine had lived just 30 miles away from us for most of my childhood. She hadn't abandoned me. She hadn't disappeared. She had been right there trying to reach me while I grew up believing the lie that Laura was my mother. Desperate for more information, I called my father's brother, Uncle Robert. We hadn't spoken in years, my parents having claimed he was unreliable and a bad influence. Now, I wondered if his real crime had been knowing the truth. When he answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Uncle Robert, it's Sarah. I know about Catherine. I know Laura isn't my real mother." His sharp intake of breath told me everything. "Oh God, Sarah. You finally found out. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I tried once," he admitted. "When you were 16, your father threatened to cut me off from the entire family if I ever mentioned Catherine to you. Said he'd make sure I never saw you or Melissa again. Tell me about her, please. I need to know." Uncle Robert's voice softened. "Catherine was wonderful, Sarah. Creative, kind, full of life. She loved you more than anything in the world. After you were born, she struggled with severe postpartum depression. Your father couldn't handle it. When you were about 3, she asked for some time apart to get treatment. Instead of supporting her, he used that separation to file for divorce and take you away. And Laura was his accountant. They were already involved before the separation. She made it clear from the beginning that she wanted a clean slate with James. No ex-wife complications. She gave him an ultimatum: choose between her or allowing Catherine in your life. And he chose her," I said bitterly. "Yes. He chose the path that was easier for him. Laura adopted you, and they created this fiction that she had always been your mother. Catherine fought it every step of the way, but your father's family had money and influence. They portrayed her as unstable, unfit. It was ugly, Sarah. Do you know where she is now?" I asked, hope rising within me. "Last I heard, she moved to Seattle. Started a new life there after years of fighting the legal system and losing. I think it broke her heart too much to stay in Portland, knowing you were so close but unreachable." Uncle Robert paused, then said, "I have her contact information, Sarah. I've kept in touch with her over the years. She still asks about you every time we talk." My heart stuttered. "She asks about me after all this time. She never stopped loving you, Sarah. Never stopped hoping that someday when you were old enough, you'd find your way back to her." With shaking hands, I wrote down the phone number and address Uncle Robert gave me. Catherine Miller was living in an apartment in downtown Seattle, just 3 hours away by car. Does she know that I didn't know about her? I asked, suddenly afraid that my birth mother might have spent decades thinking I had rejected her. "Yes," Uncle Robert assured me. "She understood your father and Laura had created a narrative you had no reason to question. She never blamed you, not for a second." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, the pieces of my life rearranging themselves into a new, painful reality. My father hadn't just lied about who my mother was. He had systematically erased a woman who loved me from my life, intercepted her letters, blocked her legal rights, and constructed an elaborate fiction that I had fully believed. "I need to go to Seattle," I told Tyler. "I need to meet her." Tyler nodded without hesitation. "We'll leave tomorrow morning." That night, as I packed a small bag for our trip, I came across a photo of my father, Laura, Melissa, and me from Christmas 2 years ago. We were all smiling, but now I could see what I had missed before the careful distance Laura maintained from me, the way my father's arm was around Melissa, but not me, the subtle signs that I was adjacent to this family but never fully part of it. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full rage of what had been done to me. Not just the crew's betrayal, which now seemed like merely a symptom of a much deeper disease, but the systematic erasure of my history, my identity, and my relationship with my birth mother. Tomorrow I would begin reclaiming what had been taken from me. Tomorrow I would meet the mother I couldn't remember but who had never forgotten me. The drive to Seattle was the longest 3 hours of my life. Tyler offered to play music, but I preferred the silence, using the time to process everything I'd learned and prepare for what lay ahead. What would she look like now? Would I recognize her? Would she recognize me? What would I even say to the mother who had been erased from my life? We found her apartment building, easily enough a modest but well-maintained complex near downtown. Standing in front of her door, my courage nearly failed me. What if she didn't want to see me? What if she had moved on with her life? "You can do this," Tyler whispered, squeezing my hand. "Whatever happens, I'm right here." I knocked before I could lose my nerve. Footsteps approached from inside, and then the door opened. Time seemed to stop as I looked into a face so similar to my own it was like seeing my future self. The same eyes, the same smile lines, even the way she tilted her head in question. Catherine Miller had aged gracefully, her dark hair now streaked with silver, but she was unmistakably the woman from the photographs. Her eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sarah," she whispered as if afraid, speaking too loudly might make me disappear. I nodded, unable to form words past the lump in my throat. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's really you." We stood frozen for a moment before she reached for me hesitantly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. Instead, I stepped into her embrace, and something inside me clicked into place, a sense of rightness I had never felt before. She smelled of lavender and vanilla, and somehow that scent triggered a cascade of memories so faint they might have been dreams. Being held in these same arms, a lullaby sung in this same voice. The comfort of absolute love. We were both crying when we finally separated. Catherine touched my face gently as if memorizing every feature. "You're so beautiful," she said. "I've imagined this moment for 30 years. She invited us in, apologizing for the small apartment while making coffee with shaking hands. Photos covered nearly every surface, and I realized with a shock that many were of me. School pictures obviously obtained from other sources. Newspaper clippings of academic awards and marketing events I'd participated in. She had been following my life from afar all these years. "I don't even know where to begin," I admitted once we were seated. "Begin wherever feels right," she said gently. "I'm just so grateful you're here." So I started with the cruise, explaining how discovering that betrayal had unraveled everything else. Catherine listened intently, pain and anger flashing across her face at appropriate moments but never interrupting. When I finished my story, she took a deep breath. "I guess it's my turn now. You deserve the whole truth." Catherine's story poured out like a river breaking through a dam. She had met my father when they were both in college. He was charming, ambitious from a wealthy family while she came from modest means. They married young, and I was born 2 years later. "You were a beautiful baby," she said, showing me photos I'd never seen. "So alert and bright from the very beginning. The happiest 9 months of my life were carrying you." But after my birth, Catherine developed severe postpartum depression. In the early 90s, mental health wasn't discussed openly, and the condition was often misunderstood. "Your father couldn't handle it," she explained. He'd been raised to believe mental health problems were just weakness or attention-seeking. When I couldn't get out of bed some days, he took it personally, like I was choosing to be unhappy in our perfect life. When I was about 3, Catherine's doctor recommended a brief separation so she could focus on intensive treatment. It was never meant to be permanent. Just a few weeks for me to get proper help. I was staying with my sister in Eugene. But while she was away getting treatment, my father filed for divorce, citing abandonment. He used his family's connections to push the proceedings through quickly. By the time I was stable enough to fight back, he had already been granted temporary, full custody. His lawyer painted me as an unstable, unfit mother who had abandoned her family. The more I protested, the more unstable I appeared to the court. Around this time, Laura entered the picture. She had been doing the accounting for my father's business, and according to Catherine, they had grown close before the separation. Laura made it clear from the beginning that she wanted no competition. She wanted to be your only mother. That was her condition for marrying your father. What followed was years of legal battles. Catherine fought for custody, then for reasonable visitation, then simply for the right to send letters and gifts. At every turn, my father and Laura blocked her efforts. They moved 3 times in 2 years to make it harder for me to maintain contact. They changed your school without notifying me. They returned every gift I sent unopened. Eventually, they got a restraining order claiming I was harassing them by trying to see you. When I was 6, around the time Melissa was born, Laura legally adopted me. The courts terminated Catherine's parental rights, citing her failure to maintain a relationship with me despite the abundant evidence that my father and Laura had prevented any such relationship. After the adoption, I had no legal rights at all. But I couldn't give up on you. I moved to Portland to be near you just in case something changed. I attended your school events from a distance. I watched you play soccer in the park. I even saw you graduate high school, sitting in the very back row where your parents wouldn't notice me. My heart broke thinking of her watching my life unfold, from the shadows sending letters I would never read, buying gifts I would never receive. Why didn't you approach me directly when I was older? I asked. As an adult, I could have made my own decision. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I was afraid. Afraid you had fully bonded with Laura as your mother. Afraid disrupting your life would only hurt you. Afraid you might reject me if you believed whatever story they had told you. She took my hand. But not a day went by that I didn't think about you, love you, wonder who you were becoming. As we talked into the evening, Catherine showed me more photos, told me stories about my early years that I had no memory of. She revealed that after years of healing, she had eventually remarried and had 2 other children, my half-siblings, Michael and Jennifer, now 24 and 22. They know all about you, she assured me. I've told them stories about their big sister their whole lives. They've always wanted to meet you. The next morning, I did meet them. Michael arrived first, a tall young man with our mother's eyes and an easy smile. He hugged me without hesitation. Finally, he said, "Mom's been waiting for this day forever." Jennifer arrived shortly after, more reserved, but equally warm. "This is so weird," she admitted, "but in the best possible way. We've had a phantom sister our whole lives." Sitting in Catherine's living room with my newfound siblings, I experienced a sense of belonging I had never felt with Melissa. There was an ease, a natural connection that transcended our years apart. We had the same mannerisms, the same laugh. Michael even held his coffee mug the same unusual way I did. My phone rang while we were looking through old photos. It was Uncle Robert. "I thought you should know," he said without preamble. "I've spoken to your father." "How did that go?" I asked, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. "Not well. He's furious. I gave you Catherine's information. But I learned something else." He paused. The reason Laura was so adamant about cutting Catherine out completely wasn't just jealousy or wanting to be your only mother. She threatened to leave with Melissa if James ever told you the truth or allowed Catherine back in your life. She blackmailed him with his younger daughter, I said flatly. Essentially, yes. He chose to keep his marriage intact and keep Melissa at the cost of your relationship with Catherine. It was selfish and wrong, but that's the truth of it. After hanging up, I returned to the living room with a new understanding of the dynamics that had shaped my life. My father hadn't just been cruel or thoughtless. He had made a calculated choice to sacrifice my right to know my birth mother in order to keep his new wife and younger daughter. I stayed in Seattle for 3 days, soaking up the connection with Catherine and my siblings. We talked for hours, filling in 30 years of missing history. There were tears and laughter, pain and healing. For the first time in my life, I felt unconditionally loved, accepted exactly as I was without having to earn approval. Before leaving, I made plans to return soon. Catherine hugged me tightly at the door. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "Not for one single day." Driving back to Portland with Tyler, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter with the newfound connections and truth, heavier with the weight of betrayal I now fully understood. "What are you going to do when they get back from the cruise?" Tyler asked as we neared home. I looked out at the familiar landscape rushing past. "I'm going to confront them with the truth. All of it." For 2 weeks, I prepared for my parents' return. I organized the documents I'd found, made copies of Catherine's letters, and rehearsed what I would say. Tyler worried about my obsessive focus, but I needed to be absolutely ready for the confrontation that had been 30 years in the making. I tracked the cruise ship's progress online, watching as it made its way back to Fort Lauderdale. The night before their scheduled return to Portland, I drove to their house and let myself in. I wanted the advantage of territory. Wanted them to find me waiting rather than the other way around. I sat in the dimly lit living room for hours, surrounded by evidence of their deception. Shortly after noon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Voices approached the front door, the sound of keys in the lock. And then they were there, tanned and smiling from their luxury vacation, freezing in shock when they saw me sitting in their living room. "Sarah," my father said, his face draining of color. "What are you doing here?" Waiting for answers, I replied calmly. Laura's expression hardened immediately. "You had no right to break into our home." "I used the key you gave me," I corrected her. "The emergency key for the daughter you pretended to have for 28 years. My father set down their luggage, his movements careful, as if approaching a wild animal. "Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally." Before he could continue, Melissa and Brandon entered, laughing about something until they registered the tension in the room. "Oh," Melissa said, looking between us. "Sarah, hi." "Hi, Melissa," I said, my voice steady. "Did you enjoy spending my $20,000 in the Caribbean?" She at least had the grace to look ashamed, while Brandon awkwardly suggested they should leave. "No," I said firmly. "Stay. This concerns all of you." Once everyone had reluctantly taken seats, I began the conversation I had been rehearsing for weeks. "I want to know why you left for the cruise without telling me. Why you took Melissa and Brandon instead. And most importantly, why you lied to me my entire life about Laura not being my biological mother." My father sighed deeply. "We should have handled this differently. The cruise was poor judgment on our part." "Poor judgment," I repeated incredulously. "I paid $20,000 for your anniversary gift, and you took it without a word to me bringing my sister instead. That's not poor judgment, that's theft." "It was meant to be a family celebration," Laura interjected. "I am family," I countered. "Or at least I thought I was, until Dad informed me on the phone that you're actually my stepmother, not my mother, as I've been led to believe my entire life." Melissa gasped. "What, Dad? What is she talking about?" My father's face contorted with a mixture of anger and guilt. "This isn't how this conversation was supposed to happen." "When was it supposed to happen?" I demanded. "After 30 more years of lies. Were you ever going to tell me the truth?" "It was better this way," Laura said coldly. "Cleaner. What would have been the point of confusing you about who your mother was? I raised you." "The point would have been honesty," I said. "The point would have been allowing me a relationship with my birth mother, who never abandoned me, as you've implied. The point would have been giving me the basic human right to know my own identity." I pulled out the stack of unopened letters from Catherine. "These were addressed to me. You had no right to keep them from me." My father stared at the letters, his face ashen. "Where did you find those?" "In your locked desk drawer, along with evidence of how thoroughly you erased Catherine from my life." I turned to Laura. "The cruise was your idea, wasn't it? To celebrate your anniversary without me?" Laura straightened her spine. "Yes, it was my idea. I wanted one vacation with just our immediate family." "I am immediate family." I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "I am his daughter." "You've never been mine," Laura said, her voice frigid. "I tried, Sarah. For years I tried to feel for you what I feel for Melissa. But you were always Catherine's child. You look like her. You act like her. Every time I looked at you, I saw the woman my husband loved before me." The naked honesty of her resentment silenced the room. Melissa looked horrified, my father defeated. "So the cruise," I said quietly, "was just another way to exclude me from the family fiction you created." "We were going to pay you back," my father offered weakly. "This isn't about the money," I slammed my hand on the coffee table, making everyone jump. "This is about 30 years of lies. This is about stealing my mother from me. This is about letting me believe I was your daughter Laura, while you secretly resented me for existing." Laura didn't deny it. Her silence was confirmation enough. "I want the $20,000 repaid," I said flatly. "Not eventually. Now." "We don't have that kind of money available right now," my father admitted. The cruise wasn't the only expense. We had to. I don't care what else you spent money on, I interrupted. That was my money earned through my hard work that you essentially stole. It was a gift, Laura argued. Gifts don't come with conditions. The condition was that it was for you and Dad, not for you to take my sister on a vacation I paid for, without even telling me. Melissa spoke up for the first time. For what it's worth, I didn't know you weren't invited, Sarah. Not at first. Mom and Dad told me you couldn't get the time off work but had insisted we go enjoy ourselves. And you believed that I asked her that my sister had accepted such an obvious lie. She looked down. I thought it was weird, but I didn't question it. I should have. Brandon put his arm around Melissa. We both feel terrible about this, Sarah. If we'd known the full story. But you didn't ask, did you? I said bitterly. No one in this family asks questions. We just accept the convenient narrative. My father tried again. Sarah, I know you're upset. Upset doesn't begin to cover it, Dad. I've met Catherine. I've met my half-siblings. I know everything now. His face paled further. You went to Seattle. Yes. And Catherine told me how you used your family's money and influence to take me away from her. How you married Laura almost immediately after separating from Catherine. How you systematically blocked every attempt she made to maintain a relationship with me. She was unwell, he said defensively. It wasn't safe. She had postpartum depression, I cried. A treatable condition. She was actively seeking help for. You used her illness as an excuse to leave her for Laura, then punished her for it for 30 years. The arguments continued in circles. My father making weak justifications, Laura alternating between icy silence and caustic remarks. Melissa increasingly distraught as she realized the extent of the deception. Finally, I stood up. I've said what I came to say. I want my money repaid. I want acknowledgement of the wrong that was done to me and to Catherine. And I want you both to know that I will never see either of you in the same way again. You're being melodramatic, Laura snapped. Plenty of children are raised by step-parents without this kind of scene. This isn't about being raised by a step-parent, I said quietly. This is about being lied to about my very identity. This is about having a mother who was alive and well and desperate to know me who was kept from me by your selfishness and insecurity. I gathered my things and headed for the door. My father called after me, Sarah, please. We need to work this out as a family. I turned back one last time. Family is built on trust and love. Whatever this is, it's not family. As I walked to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Melissa running to catch up. Sarah, wait, she called. Please. I paused, allowing her to reach me. I had no idea, she said, tears streaming down her face. About any of it. I swear. I believe you, I said, softening slightly. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't pretend nothing happened. I can't go back to Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations knowing what I know now. Melissa nodded understanding. For what it's worth, I'm so sorry. And I want to know my sister. The real you, not the version that fits into their narrative. I gave her a small, sad smile. I'd like that. As I drove away from the house I grew up in, I felt a strange mix of devastation and liberation. The family I thought I had was gone forever, but in its place was the possibility of something more authentic. I had a birth mother who had never stopped loving me. I had half-siblings eager to know me. I had Tyler, whose love had never been conditional. And perhaps I had the beginning of a real relationship with Melissa, free from the distortions of our parents' lies. The confrontation had not gone as I had hoped, but it had gone as it needed to. The truth was finally out, and with it came the chance for a new beginning. The days following the confrontation were eerily quiet. No calls from my father, no texts from Laura. It was as if by walking out of their house, I had walked out of their lives entirely. I was emotionally exhausted, but also strangely clear-headed. Tyler was my rock throughout handling practical matters, when I couldn't giving me space to process when I needed it. You know, he said one evening, as we ate takeout on our couch, I'm proud of you. Standing up to them like that took incredible courage. I managed a tired smile. I don't feel courageous. I feel emptied out. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened it, Melissa stood there looking nervous. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I invited her inside, noticing she seemed agitated. Tyler excused himself to give us privacy. "I've been thinking about everything," she began once we were seated. "And there's more you should know." Melissa's revelation came in fits and starts. She had been shocked by what she learned at the confrontation and had started questioning other family narratives. She'd gone through our parents' financial documents while they were out and discovered disturbing information. "They're broke, Sarah," she said bluntly. "The house is in pre-foreclosure. They've maxed out their credit cards. Dad's retirement account is nearly empty." "What? How is that possible?" She shook her head. "Poor investments mostly. Dad tried some day trading that went badly. But here's the worst part. I think they used your cruise money to pay off urgent debts, not actually for the cruise itself." "What do you mean?" "The cruise was much cheaper than $20,000. It was a last-minute deal under $10,000 for all four of us. I saw the receipt when Mom was organizing her purse on the ship." The betrayal deepened with every word. They hadn't just excluded me from a cruise I paid for. They had used most of my money for their own financial problems without telling me. "There's more," Melissa said, her voice dropping. "They've been manipulating both of us for years. Me with constant approval and gifts to keep me loyal. You with just enough attention to keep you trying to earn more. It was like they were playing us against each other." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, suspicious of her sudden candor. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner. Because I've benefited from their favoritism my entire life, without questioning it. Because you're my sister, and you deserve better." As we talked late into the night, Melissa revealed patterns of manipulation I had never noticed. How Laura would make disparaging comments about me when I wasn't present. How my father would compare us in ways designed to make me work harder for approval while keeping Melissa dependent on their validation. "I always thought you were the strong one," Melissa admitted. "The one who didn't need their constant attention. I never realized they were deliberately withholding it from you." My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from our father, which I ignored. Melissa's phone rang too, Laura's name flashing on the screen. "They know I'm here," she said, declining the call. "They're panicking that I'm talking to you." "Are you going back to their house tonight?" I asked. Melissa hesitated. "I don't think I can. Not knowing what I know now." She ended up staying in our guest room, ignoring increasingly frantic messages from our parents. In the morning, Laura left a chilling voicemail. "If you don't come home immediately, there will be serious consequences. You don't know what you're getting involved in." The threatening tone confirmed everything Melissa had revealed about their manipulative nature. My father's approach was different. A voicemail suggesting family counseling to work through our misunderstandings. Both messages had the same underlying message returned to the family fold and the established narrative or face rejection. Over the next few days, I consulted with a lawyer about the cruise payment, showing her the documentation of my transfer to the cruise line. She confirmed I had a strong case for fraud or unjust enrichment. "You could easily pursue this in small claims court," she advised. "The evidence is clear that the gift was for a specific purpose that was not honored." Meanwhile, Melissa moved temporarily into an apartment near mine, needing distance from our parents to sort through her own feelings about the revelations. We began spending time together, regularly building a relationship based on honesty rather than the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. A week after the confrontation, an unexpected package arrived from Uncle Robert. Inside was a file of documents he had kept secret for years, afraid of my father's reaction should they come to light. "Your grandfather left you a trust fund," Melissa said in shock as we reviewed the papers together, "for your education and eventual wedding." The documents showed that my paternal grandparents had established separate trusts for both me and Melissa when we were born. Mine should have provided funds for my college education and included a significant amount for my wedding day. But financial records showed my father had diverted most of my trust to Melissa, instead funding her private school tuition and later her lavish wedding. "He stole your inheritance," Melissa whispered, horrified, "and gave it to me." The discovery of this financial betrayal was the final straw. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the court seeking recovery of both the cruise payment and the misappropriated trust funds. The evidence was overwhelming: bank statements, the original trust documents, and my father's own signature on forms redirecting the money. When served with the legal papers, my father called in a panic. "Sarah, please, we can work this out privately," he begged. "Don't do this to the family." "You did this to the family," I replied calmly. "For 30 years you've been making choices that benefited you, Laura and Melissa, at my expense. I'm simply asking for what's legally mine." The family fractured completely in the wake of my lawsuit. Laura refused to speak to me at all. My father vacillated between pleading and anger. Extended family members took sides, some supporting my search for truth and justice, others condemning me for airing dirty laundry in public. The most unexpected consequence was Melissa's unwavering support. Despite pressure from our parents, she provided an affidavit confirming what she knew about the trust fund and the cruise deception. Her loyalty to truth over family fiction cost her the relationship with Laura, who saw her alliance with me as the ultimate betrayal. "I never thought I'd be estranged from them," Melissa confessed one evening as we shared dinner. "But I can't unsee the manipulation now. It's like a veil has been lifted." As our case progressed toward a court date, I maintained regular contact with Catherine and my half-siblings. These relationships, new but deeply meaningful, helped sustain me through the painful process of legal action against my father. The family I had always known was irreparably broken, but from the fragments emerged the possibility of something more: authentic relationships based on truth, rather than convenient fictions; on genuine connection, rather than obligation or manipulation. I no longer mourned the loss of the family I thought I had. That family had never truly existed. Instead, I looked forward to building connections with the people who were willing to face truth, however uncomfortable, and move forward with honesty and love. 3 months after discovering my parents' betrayal on the cruise, I stood ready to face them in court, not just for financial restitution, but for the acknowledgement that the truth matters, that lies have consequences, and that even family relationships must be founded on something more substantial than convenient fiction. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, intimate in a way that made the confrontation feel all the more personal. I sat with my lawyer at one table, while my father and Laura occupied the other, their attorney between them like a barrier. Melissa sat in the gallery directly behind me, her presence a silent statement of support. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the documents carefully before addressing the court. "This is an unusual case," she noted. "Family matters typically don't intersect with financial fraud so clearly." My lawyer presented our case methodically. The $20,000 for the cruise transferred with a specific purpose that was disregarded. The trust fund established by my grandparents systematically diverted from its intended beneficiary. The decades of deception surrounding my birth mother. My father's attorney attempted to portray the situation as a family misunderstanding. The cruise was a gift without explicit conditions, he argued, and the trust was managed by Miss Henderson in what he believed was the best interest of both his daughters. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my statement simple but direct. "Your Honor, this isn't about money. It's about truth and consequences. For 30 years, I was lied to about my own identity. My relationship with my birth mother was stolen from me. My inheritance was taken without my knowledge. I'm not asking for punishment. I'm asking for what's rightfully mine and for acknowledgement of the wrong that was done." The judge asked pointed questions of both sides, particularly pressing my father on the trust fund diversion. His explanations grew increasingly convoluted, until finally he admitted, "I thought Sarah would never find out." Those 6 words seemed to hang in the air, damning in their naked honesty. He hadn't made a mistake. He hadn't misunderstood the terms. He had deliberately hidden the truth, counting on my ignorance to protect him from consequences. The judge's ruling came swiftly. She ordered full repayment of the cruise cost plus interest. More significantly, she ruled that the trust fund had been improperly administered and ordered a forensic accounting to determine exactly how much had been diverted, with full restitution to be paid. "Mr. Henderson," she concluded, "the court takes a dim view of parents who breach fiduciary duty to their children. You were entrusted with funds specifically designated for your daughter's benefit, and you chose to use them elsewhere. That the beneficiary was your other daughter does not mitigate the breach of trust. To satisfy the judgment, my parents were forced to sell their vacation property, a small cabin in the mountains I hadn't even known they owned. The irony wasn't lost on me. Another secret, another asset hidden while they claimed financial hardship. As we left the courtroom, Laura collapsed into a sobbing heap, the public humiliation finally breaking through her icy facade. My father rushed to console her, ignoring me completely. Their performance of victimhood might have affected me once, but now I saw it clearly for what it was: another manipulation, another attempt to avoid responsibility. Melissa squeezed my hand as we walked out. "You did the right thing," she whispered. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life around truth rather than fiction. Tyler and I reimagined our wedding plans, opting for a small, intimate ceremony rather than the large event my parents had always expected. We set a date for early spring, giving ourselves time to heal from the family trauma before starting our new chapter together. Catherine became deeply involved in the wedding preparations, our relationship growing stronger with each shared experience. My half-siblings Michael and Jennifer planned to attend, excited to be part of my new beginning. Uncle Robert agreed to walk me down the aisle, his loyalty to truth, having withstood decades of my father's pressure. Melissa and I grew closer than we had ever been, our relationship no longer distorted by our parents' manipulations. She moved permanently to an apartment near mine, creating healthy distance from the toxic family dynamics while maintaining our sisterly bond. 1 week before the wedding, my father called unexpectedly. "I'd like to attend the ceremony," he said, his voice subdued. "Just me. Not Laura." Why, I asked, suspicious of his motives. "Because you're still my daughter," he said simply. "And I've missed too much already." After much consideration and discussion with Tyler and Catherine, I agreed to allow him limited participation, seated quietly in the back, no role in the ceremony, no speech at the reception. It was a boundary that acknowledged our biological connection while protecting the emotional sanctity of the day. The wedding itself was beautiful in its authenticity. Catherine walked me down the aisle alongside Uncle Robert, their combined support symbolizing both my past and my future. My father sat alone in the last row, watching silently as I married the man who had stood by me through the unraveling of my family mythology. During the father-daughter dance, traditionally a moment between bride and father, I had planned to dance with Uncle Robert. But as the music began, my father approached hesitantly. "May I have part of this dance?" he asked, his eyes revealing a vulnerability I had rarely seen. I nodded, allowing him to lead me for half the song before Uncle Robert took over. In that brief dance, we both acknowledged what had been lost: 30 years of honest relationship that could never be recovered. The damage was done, but in that moment, there was at least recognition of its magnitude. My father's wedding gift was unexpected, a box containing family heirlooms that had belonged to my grandmother, along with a letter expressing genuine remorse for the choices he had made. "These should have been yours all along," he wrote. "Like the truth." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a step towards something like understanding. Some wounds were too deep to fully heal, some betrayals too fundamental to be entirely forgiven. But there was room perhaps for a new type of relationship built on the clear-eyed acknowledgement of past wrongs, rather than their continued denial. Catherine and I established a tradition of monthly dinner dates, gradually making up for lost time, while recognizing that some gaps could never be filled. We celebrated 1 year since our reunion with a weekend trip to the Oregon coast, creating new memories to stand alongside the old ones I had been denied. Melissa moved further from our parents' influence, establishing her own identity separate from the golden child role she had been assigned. She filed for divorce from Brandon, recognizing that her marriage, like so much else in her life, had been shaped by our parents' expectations rather than her own desires. As for Laura, she remained unrepentant and distant. The loss of both daughters seemed a price she was unwilling to acknowledge she had played a role in creating. My father made tentative steps toward redemption, attending occasional dinners, asking thoughtful questions about my life, and respecting the boundaries I established. Tyler and I began discussing starting our own family, both committed to breaking the cycles of secrecy and conditional love that had defined my childhood. "Our children will always know the truth," I promised. The whole messy, complicated truth. The cruise that I wasn't invited to, the betrayal that had unraveled my entire family narrative, had ultimately led me to a more authentic life than I could have imagined. The pain of discovering I had been lied to for 30 years was balanced by the joy of finding my birth mother, developing a genuine relationship with my sister, and building a life based on truth rather than convenient fiction. Looking back now, I realize that what appeared to be the worst betrayal, being excluded from the cruise I had paid for, was actually the first step toward liberation. Had my parents included me, had they maintained their deception for years longer, how much more of my life would have been built on lies? Sometimes, the most painful revelations are also the most necessary ones. As I look toward the future, I no longer feel the need to earn love or approval. I no longer question my worth when someone treats me with less than full respect. I know who I am now, not just Sarah Henderson, dutiful daughter, but Sarah who demands truth, who values authenticity over comfort, who understands that real family is defined not by blood or legal documents, but by honesty, respect, and unconditional love. That knowledge, hard-won through pain and confrontation, is worth more than any cruise, any inheritance, any comfortable fiction could ever be. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed how you saw your entire childhood? Or have you experienced that moment when you realized your family relationships weren't what you thought they were? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of discovery and healing resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more true family stories. And if you know someone struggling with family deception or difficult truths, share this video. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences is the first step toward healing. Thank you for witnessing my story, and remember, the truth may be painful, but living authentically is always worth it in the end.